BibleWorm, reading the Bible with BibleWorm.
Welcome to BibleWorm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, professor of religious studies at Hendrix College and theologian in residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning at Congregation or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week we're reading the story of Elisha and Naaman in 2 Kings 5, 1-15. The story focuses on the Aramean general Naaman, who is successful in battle, but hindered by a case of leprosy that no one can cure. When an Israelite girl tells Naaman to visit the prophet Elisha in Israel, it sets in motion a drama animated by the peculiar expectations of people in power about how the world should work. Proper chains of authority, proper expressions of hospitality, and proper rituals of healing. Naaman is offended when Elisha doesn't come to the door to see him, and even more upset that Elisha should tell him to bathe in the River Jordan. We talk about the ways our expectations of how things should be can hinder our ability to experience the miraculous, how people outside of positions of power are often the ones who can see most clearly, and the possibility that God's healing power is already in the world, not requiring someone to mediate it with a wave of the hand, but only someone who can recognize God's work and point others in the right direction. Thanks for joining us. Amy, it's BibleWorm time again.
It is that time again. It comes every week.
Every week. It does. It's so delightful to see you.
It's delightful to see you too.
Anything happening in your world that we want to talk about?
Here's what's happening in my world. My daughter wants to try out for the high school musical, which is Fiddler on the Roof.
Wow.
And so this is an outstanding opportunity for me to force the entire family to watch the 3-hour version of the Fiddler on the Roof movie.
Yeah.
A project which we started this week, but will take us a long time.
How long can you sustain it before people start to fade out?
Right now, people are into it. We'll see. I don't know. 3 hours is really long.
Yeah.
It's a really long movie, but I can dance. I can really dance very much like Tevye, which is entertaining to my family.
Oh, nice. So you just like act it out while it's going on? You just
that does happen. I've seen that
like
a lot of times. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm currently watching Better Call Saul, and I made it to the last season. I'm in season 6, I guess. But I've been watching the first episode for like a week and a half. And I watch it right before I go to bed, and I keep falling asleep. And then I can't remember what happens. I have to wake up and the next day, then I start it over. And so I've been on the same episode for a week. I'm very tired a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
You have small people in your house.
I do.
Yeah.
They're delightful.
Maybe they would like to see me dance like Tevye. Maybe I could teach them to dance like Tevye.
Oh, that would be
not
even
your
better.
Littlest.
I don't know.
Littlest, little young.
Probably. Yeah. My daughter is very much into dancing, though.
Great.
Yeah.
This is going to be amazing.
It'll be amazing.
Okay, good. We have a plan for
We
what.
do.
Let's talk about the Bible, and then I will drive to Arkansas and dance like Tevye with your child.
I love it. Yeah, well, let's do it. All right. Today, we are in 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1-15. And we are in the story of the prophet Elisha and a Syrian general who I'm going to call Naaman because I speak Southern or Protestant.
Great.
I don't know what I'm speaking exactly. Maybe I'm speaking Protestant.
Okay, good.
You're going to say...
I'm going to say Naaman.
Naaman, which is the correct way to say that. And I am capable of saying Naaman, but I know that I'm going to say Naaman, which is sort of like...
So you just let's call a spade a spade. This is what's happening. This is what's going to happen.
I could concentrate and say Naaman, but sometime or another, I'm going to lose my concentration. I'm going to say Naaman. It's like a horse person. What's your name, horse person? Nay, man.
Oh my God. I was like, I don't know
I had
what
to work
you're talking about.
I had to work a long way around to get to that very mediocre
to get
joke.
to the horseman. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yes, let's read about this horseman. Naaman.
Okay. Amy, last time we were in 1 Kings chapter 3, where we were talking about Solomon and his wise judgment between two women. Now we are in 2 Kings chapter 5. I don't know if we need to know anything more to get to this text or not, but what would you say about what we need to transition from last week to this week?
The piece of background information that I want to offer is not actually like a plot continuity piece of information. Yeah. It's about the different kinds of prophets.
Oh, yeah.
Like categories of prophets that we believe to have existed based on the biblical text.
Yeah.
Because we read before in a previous story, the prophet Nathan, who speaks to David. Nathan is an example of a prophet who functions within the palace system. Like he is invited into the home of the king and speaks to the king and can rebuke the king, and the king takes it seriously.
Yeah.
That's one sort of category of what the Bible calls prophecy or profiteering. No, that's not the right word. Being a prophet. Yeah.
Isaiah is kind of in that category. Like we haven't gotten to Isaiah yet, but
Isaiah is in that category too.
Yeah, sort of on the king's payroll almost. Yeah.
Yes, he's an insider. Mm-hmm. And then there are prophets who are very critical of the government, who are sort of outsiders to that system. I don't think we've read any of those this year. Who would we put in that category?
I would put Amos in that category.
I was going to say Amos, like Micah. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
In this chapter, we get another kind of prophet that feels really different to me. I think this is what our old professor David Peterson would call a man of God.
Yes.
These dudes have like powers.
Right.
It's not that they're giving you wisdom or rebuke or conveying a message or, like Ezekiel does all this crazy stuff to try to get people's attention, but really he's just trying to convey a message from God in the best and most attention-getting way that he can. Elijah and Elisha seem to have I hate to say the word magical powers, but it seems kind of like magical powers. Like they can heal people, they can make bears attack children.
Make axe heads float. Yeah.
They can do stuff. And we're going to see healing in this chapter. I'm not really sure what else to say about these categories of prophecy other than just that the text uses that word or that, label to cover actually a lot of different roles that people had in society.
That's really helpful, Amy. And, I think it is probably true that Elijah and Elisha both also have some sort of prophetic role in the more traditional sense as peripheral prophets who criticize the king. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is really important, that these guys have the power to actually do things in the world, to affect changes, to work miracles is really what they're doing.
Yeah, yes.
And that seems to be part of what they are doing as prophets. And not all prophets are able to do that. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are plot points that we sort of need to pick up where we are in this story?
The only thing that occurs to me is just after Solomon's reign, the kingdom splits north and south. And so we've got a king of Israel in the north who is located in Samaria, which is where this text takes place. And then we've got a king of Judah in the south, located in Jerusalem. The southern kingdom, as you well know, is the lineage of David that follows in the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is not Davidic. And Elijah and Elisha are both prophets in the northern kingdom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't really know. We could get into the specifics of sort of what kings and where and what have you, but I don't think it actually matters in particular in this text.
No, I think that's right. That's really helpful just to know this is for people who track these things. This is part of the northern traditions.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's dive in and see where this takes us.
Alrighty.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up with 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, and I'm reading in the Common English Bible. Naaman, a general for the king of Aram, was a great man and highly regarded by his master, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. This man was a mighty warrior, but he had a skin disease. Now Aramean raiding parties had gone out and captured a young girl from the land of Israel. She served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "I wish that my master could come before the prophet who lives in Samaria. He would cure him of his skin disease." So Naaman went and told his master what the young girl from the land of Israel had said. Then Aram's king said, "Go ahead, I will send a letter to Israel's king." So Naaman left. He took along 10 kikars of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He brought the letter to Israel's king. It read, "Along with this letter, I'm sending you my servant Naaman, so you can cure him of his skin disease." All right, Amy, so we're introduced to this character Naaman, who is a general in the army of the king of Aram. Where is Aram? What is that about?
Well, I know this because I think you said it before. I will tell you, in my mind, this registered primarily as not Israel.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we're talking about a commander of an army
Yeah.
that is not Israel, neither the north nor the south, who it says that the Lord has granted victory to them. So like the Lord God of Israel, the Lord is involved in this story of this other nation, which is interesting to me. I think you said it was Syria. Did you say it was Syria?
Oh, did I say that already?
Yeah. Well, you kind of threw it away, like it's a little side comment, and I was like, "Oh, is that what Aram is?" I didn't really think about that.
Yeah. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Aram or Aram, that is
sitting
what we
at the
would
feet of Bobby Williamson
today call Syria. Yeah. But what you're saying about it is what's crucial, and both of those points are important. So this is, just to the north and to the east of Israel. And so this is sort of a traditional foe of the Israelites. They're often coming into conflict over border disputes and things such as that. And here it is said that this general, who is a general of the king of Aram, has been given victory by the Lord, that is, by the God of Israel. And so here we have some kind of universalizing sense of the Lord's rulership or something like that. Like it's God.
Yeah, and the Lord's like investment in what's going on in these other battles, and sometimes determining that other peoples should. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about what we should do with that?
I mean, I think for me, it just is maybe I shouldn't say a reminder quite, but at least it's, we talked maybe last week or a couple weeks ago about the fact that the biblical text might say in some places or seem to indicate some kind of universally understood, tenets of what God's relationship to humanity is. But in other places, that is clearly not held to be true.
Right.
So I feel like reading some other parts of the Tanakh, you really would think that God is mostly interested in what's happening in Israel and in bringing victory to the people Israel and assuring the well-being of Israel. And there's just not a lot of consideration of what God is doing in relationship to other peoples. And so this is a really nice sort of corrective to that, narrow perspective, that perspective that God's only interested in that one thing, even if those are most of the stories that are captured in the Tanakh.
Yeah.
That God is also active in this other sphere.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly right. And it reminds me a little bit of all the way back, our first conversation of this year when we were talking about Genesis 12, and we were talking about how God chooses Abraham in order to bless the whole world. And so the God who is sort of specifically committed to Israel is yet the God of the world and is in relationship with Israel as a way of being in relationship with the rest of the world. And to me, one can read this text similarly, that God is still the God of Israel, and God is particularly connected to the land of Israel, and yet God is still functional outside of Israel. I mean, if you're a monotheist, like, you've got to think that God is active.
It has to be that way. No, you're right. It's just a different lens to think about God's activity in the world
Yeah.
than what we get in a lot of other texts.
I think that's right. And especially, so in verse 2, you find out that Aramean raiding parties had gone out and captured a young girl from the land of Israel. And so, not only is God sort of with the king of Aram and this general Naaman. Ooh, I said Naaman. Look at that.
Look at that.
You turned me into a Hebrew scholar. But actually is giving them victories over the people of Israel. So, God is actually sort of on the side of the traditional enemy here. Not on the side of, but giving victory to. It does complicate the notion of God is on our side versus God is on their side.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
Now, the text tells us that he had a skin disease. Sometimes that's translated as leprosy. Sometimes it's translated, Robert Alter translates it as a skin blanch, which I think, I'm not quite sure what it means exactly, but his point is that it means that Naaman's skin is sort of white, sort of bleached out, but it's not what we today might call leprosy. Do you have any insight about?
The Hebrew word is mitzorah, which is what, there's a whole discussion in Leviticus about what to do when someone has this skin condition that has been translated as leprosy for a long, long time. There's a long tradition of calling it leprosy and also a more recent and accurate tradition of not calling it leprosy because it's not what we mean by leprosy.
Yeah.
But it is some kind of skin disease that, at least as far as we can tell from reading Leviticus, it seems to have the potential of contagion. There's concern about contagion within the laws of Israel. Like, I know this guy is not within Israel, so I don't know what traditions would have been operative for him. But if someone has an active case of this mitzorah, they have to stay outside the camp. Like, they have to stay away from the community, presumably because there is a fear of contagion. But he doesn't seem to be staying outside of the community because he's a commander of the army.
Right. Now, I was trying to think about that, whether this text is not interested in the purity issues around Metzorah, or whether it's because he's Syrian and not Israelite that the purity concerns don't apply to him exactly. But he's like traipsing around, Samaria a little bit, showing up at the king's house, and he's going to show up at the prophet's house.
Yeah.
So, or if it's not a very serious case of it that he's got, how do you read the purity issues? Just doesn't really play into this text.
It doesn't play into this text. And if my translation had read skin disease instead of leprosy, then I maybe wouldn't have gone back to the Hebrew to get this sort of like word that feels really loaded coming from the context of Leviticus. But again, I feel like a broken record on this. Just because there's a law about it in Leviticus doesn't mean everyone knew and followed that law, even in Israel.
Yeah, that's true.
But this guy does not seem to have any of the sort of isolating social implications going on in his life. He has great stature in the community as the leader of the military. He has audience with his king and then goes to Samaria and has audience with another king. He does not seem constrained by this. It's more like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not a big deal, but it's not holding him back.
That was going to be my next question is, clearly this is a concern because the text points it out, and then we're going to spend the rest of the text trying to heal the skin disease.
Yes.
So it's not that it's nothing.
Yes. But
at the same time, it doesn't have all the social implications that we would expect based on other texts where we read about leprosy, Metzorah. And so I'm just trying to sort of I don't know quite what's at stake for Naaman in having, is it just a social stigma? Is it an annoyance? Is it some sort of thing that would have held him back if he were not such an amazing general?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to hold this story in comparison, hold it alongside the other teachings we have about how this skin disease is operative, socially, because it just doesn't follow those rules. So I don't know.
I think the closest that I can get to how to make sense of it is just something like Naaman is a very impressive fellow. He has this one way in which he is not a whole, or at least considered by the text to not be a whole human being. He's sort of has this affliction, which is disrupting his life in some way or another. And so that seems to be the concern, is that he be restored to the wholeness or fullness or completeness. I don't quite know what word to use there, but so it is, the text seems to have there's a little bit of pitying him or something like that. People who see him are like, oh, I wish you could go. I mean, the slave girl says, oh, I wish that you could go and see the prophet because he could make that better. And so it's clear that people who encounter Naaman notice and wish something could be done. And so there's this sort of issue, but it doesn't seem to be a debilitating or ostracizing issue for him.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So it's this Israelite slave girl who makes the connection between Elisha and Naaman. She sees Naaman. She refers to him to Naaman's wife, refers to him as my master, and says, I wish he could come to the prophet who lives in Samaria who would cure him of his skin disease. I find this girl I just think her character is so interesting. Like, that's all she does in the story. But it's a really important thing that she does in the story. I don't know. I expected her to she was stolen in a military raid. You would expect her to not
really be rooting for her master, particularly.
How do you read this girl? What do you make of her?
That's such an interesting question, Bobby, because how I read her is this almost sort of like weird, to me. I don't know what adjective to use. I don't know what adjective to use. This portrayal of someone who has been taken captive and is totally content in their new life.
Yeah.
And is just like, okay, I understand my role in this household and society now, and I'm pulling for everybody, just like, why not keep it positive? We all help each other out, even though now I'm a captive and you're my master.
Yeah. Which
is a pretty distressing portrayal to put out into the world, as like, this is how it ought to be when someone is taken captive and made to be a servant. But it would be like saying his niece was over at the house and said this,
right.
Like someone who's sort of not quite part of the family, but immediately adjacent to the family and perfectly happy to be there. It just doesn't have any of the baggage of how she got there.
One of the things that I noticed throughout this text is there is sort of a breaking down of traditional animosities or something. Like people who ought to be enemies in this text seem not to function like enemies. Aram and Israel seem to be in some kind of a military conflict, and yet she wants to help him. Elisha is going to want to help him later. There's just something about these sort of traditional sources of anger or hostility or something are just not functional in this text. I don't quite know what to make of it either, but I do think it's interesting that instead of being embittered or angry, everyone in this text seems to kind of want to help each other out.
Yeah. I hadn't noticed that, and I really like it. And I'm going to hold on to it as we keep reading and want to plant sort of alongside that. I see as we move through this text some, I don't know if tension or maybe just sort of like two parallel understandings of the world, one of which is really oriented towards authority structures and who has traditional power. Yeah. And then most of the actual useful stuff comes not from there.
Right, that's exactly right.
And so this is the first example of that, where it's this, captive girl who's a servant who has a suggestion for how to change this thing in his life that we don't know exactly how it's holding him back, but it definitely is something he wants to change.
Yeah. That's so interesting the way you're framing that. I frame it somewhat similarly for myself, but immediately what Naaman does in verse 4 is he takes this thing that has come to him from this unofficial channel and he channels it straight into the official channels. Like, let me go tell the king.
Yes, the highest of the official channels, right? Like we're going straight to the top. Yep.
Yeah. So now he's channeled it into like, okay, here's how generals and kings deal with each other. And so we end up with this sort of retinue heading from Aram to the king of Israel with this letter about, hey, you need to cure my servant's skin disease.
Right. It goes up to the king, and then it goes parallel from king to king.
Right.
When this is definitely not what the servant girl said was supposed to happen.
Right.
But they're going to try it. They're going to take this back up through the authority structure they know. See how it goes.
And they send it with an enormous amount of money. 10 kikars of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold. I forget exactly what that calculates out to, but it's some incredible amount of money. And so it is not just that we're going to send it through official channels, but also we're going to pay a lot of money to make sure that this thing can happen in the official way that it's meant to happen.
Yes. All of the avenues that they know to make something happen, they are exercising.
Yeah, authority and money. Yep.
That would be those. And 10 changes of clothing. That is a lot of clothing. I don't bring 10 changes of clothing on trips. No, if you need more than 5, you should wash your clothes. I don't need to have 10 sets of clothing.
I had this really funny experience the other day where I've got this pair of jeans. I'm actually wearing them right now, that I wore every day for the whole pandemic. And they were sort of every day that I wasn't wearing shorts, I guess, or wearing pajamas. But I wore them. I've worn them a lot. And I've been wearing them sort of out in the world and whatever. And then last week I got them out of my closet and I was like, oh my God, are those the jeans I've been wearing? They're worn through. They've got a hole, kind of in a slightly inappropriate place. And so I don't even have 10 changes of clothes in my whole closet. Probably not just when I'm on a trip.
I just think that I don't know if that is a detail that's somehow related to his skin affliction, because there's a lot of changing of clothes when you have this skin disease, but I think maybe it's a random detail.
I read it as they're going to send 10 changes of clothes to the king, because the king is kind of a clothes hound and
oh, not like they're going to pack many suitcases for their long trip.
Yeah, I guess you could read it that way. Or you're going to, you want to look fresh and clean when you get there. I read it as they're trying to butter up the king. And so they're giving him, king likes to look fancy. So they're going to give him fancy clothes.
$1 million and 10 pairs.
Exactly. But super nice jeans. Yeah.
Nice.
The nicest really jeans you can buy. Yes. Like Jordache.
Oh, you have just aged yourself.
I was never cool enough to have Jordache jeans.
You could probably get a pair now. I still want, when I was in middle school, I desperately wanted a real pair of Keds.
Oh yeah, I do.
Remember Keds? That had the little blue label on the back, but my parents would not get me a pair of Keds because they were like, you don't need to pay $20 for a pair of tennis shoes when you can get them for $6 at Sears and Roebuck. So for months, I've been like, Amy, you're a grown woman. You can go buy Keds now. And they have them in the stores, but I can't make myself do it. Every time I go, I'm like, I just can't spend that money. But I want the Keds, Bobby. Okay, I've digressed.
Every once in a while I have new insight into you that also explains why you and I like each other so much. Because I was also the kid who was never cool enough. When I was in 6th grade or whatever, members only jackets were cool, but I couldn't have a members only jacket. So I got the Sears brand one, which is the Fox brand or something. And I was like, look at, and I just, now I look back at those things and I'm like, those all those things were really dumb trends. But I felt very sad that I couldn't participate in the dumb trends of my day.
Yeah, I know. We'll have a party sometime where we wear all the trends when we were in middle school.
Oh, that would be amazing.
We're like, yeah.
Kids in members only jackets. That would be amazing.
It'd be great. So that's what they brought to the king. $1 million
and a members only jacket. Yeah. Great. All right. So anything else that we should say about this part of the text?
I think we've said everything there is to say. It's so striking to me that how far this gets from what the Israelite girl tells them what to do and how quickly. That it's now the king is asking the other king to cure him. No one ever said the king could cure him. It's just such a big assumption about how power works and that things can only get done through these avenues of power.
Because all in the world she said was, I wish my master could come before the prophet who lives in Samaria. That would take care of it. And we're we have gotten into a whole other
We've gotten to a whole other
complicating
conversation.
things that do not need to be complicated.
That's right.
Hi everyone, it's Bobby here from the BibleWorm podcast, and I want to tell you about BibleWorm's video Bible studies, available to Patreon subscribers at the Bible Study Worm level or higher. Each week, I produce a video of about 25 minutes or so, discussing the week's narrative lectionary text and offering 5 discussion questions related to the text. Subscribers can use the videos for your own personal use or show them to your Bible study group or Sunday school class. It's basically like having me lead your group every week. You also receive early access to episodes, membership in the BibleWorm Collaborative, and a nifty BibleWorm sticker that will make you the envy of your friends and family, all for just $21 a month. See patreon.com/BibleWorm podcast for details. And now, back to this week's episode. So to complicate things even further, we'll pick up in verse 7. When the king of Israel read the letter, he ripped his clothes. He said, "What? Am I God to hand out death and life? But this king writes me asking me to cure someone of his skin disease. You must realize that he wants to start a fight with me." When Elisha the man of God heard that Israel's king had ripped his clothes, he sent word to the king, "Why did you rip your clothes? Let the man come to me. Then he'll know that there's a prophet in Israel." I just think the king of Israel's response is so funny. Is that supposed to be funny? He needed his 10 changes of clothes because he ripped the ones he had on.
He needs, yeah, you're right. Now he gets to put on his new clothes. For me, it just is, I don't know, maybe I should try to read it as funny. It struck me as like something else about power. Like once you have a certain stature, you are so easily embarrassed if you cannot do something that you're asked to do that you start like lashing out. And it's strange to me that the king assumes this is some kind of pretext to start a fight. Yeah, this has just gone way off the rails. It's gone way off the rails. And that the king, it seems, does not know that Elisha can do this.
It's not clear to me. Yeah, Elisha seems to be nowhere on the king's radar.
Unless he's so caught up in his own like mishigas about what he can, like what he can and can't do and what this other king meant or didn't mean, that he's not even thinking about how else can I solve this problem besides healing him myself. But yeah, it doesn't cross his mind that he has a prophet.
I mean, one of the things that's interesting to keep track of along these lines is what the girl had said was, "I wish you could come to the prophet." And then what the letter from the king of Aram actually says is, "I'm sending you my servant so you can cure him of the skin disease."
That's right.
The idea of the prophet has completely gotten lost in the transmission to the official channel.
Gone.
And then when the king of Israel reads it, he just reads, "You need to heal him." There's no mention of the prophet. It doesn't occur to him that there's a prophet. And so the single most important bit of information that the girl had communicated is completely lost in the process. Yep. I'm so curious about the king. I mean, I guess he's apparently been getting attacked here and there anyway, because there was that raid where the slave girl was taken. And so, I mean, maybe it's reasonable that he's thinking that this is all some sort of precursor to a fight. But it seems weird to me that you would send a whole bunch of money and clothes to a king as a way of picking a fight with them. He just seems irrational to me.
I mean, I guess I don't know how these things worked at that time. Like if you really needed a pretext or not. Yeah, it seems pretty strange to me.
I also think there's a lot of chutzpah here for Naaman, who has been leading raiding parties against Israel, to now come to Israel and say, "Hey, I need this thing from you. Can you do it for me?" Maybe that's why there's so much sort of extravagant wealth that's there.
Yeah, that could be. I think this might be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case someone else has it in addition to me. I know that the text says that Aram has had military victories delivered by the Lord, and that they carried off this young girl from the land of Israel. But I hadn't, I guess, in my mind gone all the way to the military victories we're talking about were Aram over Israel. Do you think that's what? Do I need to go all the way there?
No, I mean, that's a good point, Amy. And so I think the way that I'm thinking about it is not necessarily that the victories of Aram are only against Israel. Like my reading of it is that sort of Naaman has been sort of a successful general in all of the ways that one needs to be successful. But in my mind, this raiding party suggests that there has been hostility between Aram and Israel.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, yes, some of the hostility has been directed toward Israel, but that it's not just sort of an ongoing singular conflict between Aram and Israel. There's just sort of fighting that happens. Some of it is against Israel.
Yeah.
Is that how you read it?
No, that makes sense. It makes sense. I think part of what I'm wondering is the fact that this girl was carried off in a raid. Like, if the sovereignty of Israel is not really impacted, would the king even be overly aware that this was happening? And I don't know. I don't want to push that too far, but you're right. It is an awfully chutzpahdik thing to come and say, okay, now, unless it really is sort of a bizarre power play. Like, we are the more powerful army. I recognize this is awkward. We're going to throw some money on the table, and I want you to make this happen. But that does make it a very awkward interaction.
I'm kind of taken with your sort of where you're headed, and because I think that the text suggests that there's kind of the ongoing possibility of conflict between these two groups. I was thinking back to that text we read a couple of weeks ago where it said it was the spring and the time when kings go off to war and David stayed at home. And so there does seem like there is also just this sense of like war is always a thing that a king might do.
The weather's good. Let's go out and kill each other.
Maybe what's happening is you're living in a constant state of the possibility of violence. And so you're always on edge about it. And there are some kind of skirmishy kinds of things that go on around the edges. But mostly the king doesn't care because they don't affect him. And so it's affecting people like the slave girl, but it hasn't actually affected the king himself. But now here's the general come to stand before you. And so now it's suddenly the threat is kind of right in your face. I don't know that changes too much, but I think I like it better to say that there is the threat of violence that is kind of always there than to say there has been sort of an ongoing conflict. Because I think you're right that it's not as clear in the text that that's the case.
But I think that all of that informs in a really interesting way this interaction with the king. That it's not just two neighbors where someone's coming to ask for this random thing that you're not able to do. There's some fear or insecurity from the get-go. So maybe the fact that the king of Israel is paranoid. It's not so crazy.
What his response is what am I, God, to hand out death and life? That's just seems like a very important response, and one that has sort of a confessional element to it or a acknowledgement of the power of God to it. Why do you think the king says that in particular?
I guess it struck me as a sort of the nature of the request. The nature of the request was so far beyond the bounds of what this king saw as the power that any human being could have. The king of Israel recognizes that he is among the most powerful humans. And this request is so insane that, he comes back with this, am I God? I hadn't really thought about the confessional quality of that statement. Have you cooked that idea a little more? Have you thought about it?
I'm not sure that the king means to confess anything here, but it comes because it's going to turn out, spoiler alert, that there is somebody who can heal Naaman. And so it's going to make it doubly clear that Elisha is enacting God's power because the king has said this. So I think exactly what you've said, I'm the most powerful man around in Israel. There's no way I could do this. This is such a crazy ask. It must be trying to get me to bait me into a fight because there's nothing I can do about it. Only God could do that. And then when Elisha does what Elisha does, then you think back to this, and you're like, oh, that's the claim that's being made here, is that Elisha actually does have access to God's power or something like that. So Elisha's response then, it doesn't seem like Elisha is with the king. It seems like Elisha sort of hears tell and then sends a messenger. Like, why'd you rip your clothes? Like, send that guy to me. Then he'll know that there's a prophet in Israel. What do you make of Elisha's response right there?
It didn't really occur to me until you just reread it to me, even though I've read it and you've already read it to me, that what Elisha is trying to prove is that there's a prophet in Israel. Like, the egos in this story are so crazy. Like, Elisha doesn't say, like, don't worry, I got this.
Oh, you're right.
Like, send him to me, we can take care of it. Or like, I can show him the power of God, or like anything like that. He's just like, I shall show him there is a prophet in Israel, and it's me. Like, I don't know. This just feels like so much.
I had not read Elisha that way, but now I can read him in no other way.
I hadn't read him that way before either. I just sort of had seen him as, again, he's a little bit outside. Well, yeah, as you're saying, like, it's not like he's in the company of the king as this is happening, but he does want to help, but I think he wants to help for his own reasons, not because he actually wants to help the king.
I read that then he'll know. I mean, actually, Naaman does know that there's a prophet in Israel because that's the girl told him, but functionally,
he probably
may have forgotten, but that detail has gotten lost. I read Elisha when he says, then he'll know, as actually, really what he's saying is, then you'll know, king. Like, you ought to know better. How could you possibly forget that I'm out here? The kings and Elisha and Elijah, as you know, have a very tensive relationship, and the kings would probably mostly just assume that there weren't a prophet in Israel because they can be kind of annoying. But here, like, it actually would be useful to remember that, and the king has either forgotten it or he has not chosen to access that route.
Yeah.
I also think, I don't know, I just think it's interesting now that we talk so much about clothes that, like, this passage really does keep bringing up clothes, right? Like, he ripped your clothes. Why'd you do that? Don't rip your clothes. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to do. I guess clothes, ripping clothes is a sign of distress.
Yeah. Ripping clothes is a sign of distress. And I'm thinking now also about clothing in general as like an indicator of status and sort of social role, which I wouldn't necessarily have raised up. I don't think that's explicitly in any way why clothing comes up a lot in this story. It's just because we keep talking about the way that trying to move through traditional social structures and power systems is just taking them the wrong. It's just taking them off the path. Like, they just have to keep circling back to it. It made me think about that.
All right, so let's see what happens when Naaman shows up in verse 9. Naaman arrived with his horses and chariots. He stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent out a messenger who said, "Go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River, then your skin will be restored and become clean." But Naaman went away in anger. He said, "I thought for sure that he'd come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the bad spot, and cure the skin disease. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than all Israel's waters? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean?" So he turned away and proceeded to leave in anger. Naaman's servants came up to him and spoke to him. "Our father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? All he said to you was wash and become clean." So Naaman went down and bathed in the Jordan 7 times, just as the man of God had said. His skin was restored like that of a young boy, and he became clean. He returned to the man of God with all his attendants. He came and stood before Elisha, saying, "Now I know for certain that there's no God anywhere on earth except in Israel."
So interesting.
So, one of the interesting things in this text is, really is a very unexpected way for there to be a miracle. Like, I'm a little bit with Naaman. Like, I sort of expect Elisha to come out, pronounce something, wave his hands or do something. He doesn't even come to the door. He just sends his guy to the door and tells Naaman to go wash in the river. How do you, what is Elisha doing?
I don't know if Elisha is doing this on purpose, but I feel like what this like interaction, the way this plays out is really like turning on its head a lot of assumptions about what power and powerful acts look like. I mean, Elisha is healing him, but by not going to the door and like looking him in the eye, it seems a little dismissive.
It does.
Like it seems like I am not honoring you as a very esteemed guest. I mean, he has so many horses and chariots. This is an important person. And so Elisha is not honoring that he's not honoring that in the way that you would expect it to be honored, but he is healing him. So it's not that he doesn't, I don't want to say care for him because that sounds a little bit weird, but in a way he really is honoring him, but not his status.
Yeah. I think that's really important, Amy.
Well, then how do you think about the fact that like the ritual that is prescribed really doesn't sound much like a ritual?
Yeah, it just sounds like go wash yourself in the river. Like basically like you just need to take a bath.
Maybe you have a skin disease because you've never taken a bath.
Yeah. I mean, so I think there's a couple of things going on. The first one, I think what you're saying is really important. That, we've gotten into this thing where the slave girl said something fairly simple and it's gotten really complicated in all these official ways and letters and gifts and money and clothes. And Elisha disrupts all of that by refusing to even come to the door. He doesn't see it. He doesn't engage it. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't accept the gift. He doesn't do anything. And so we've disrupted the sort of official channels and we're going to come at it a different way. I also think it's important that the miracle is not very miracle-y. We talk every once in a while on the podcast. The one I keep coming back to is the story of the manna in the wilderness, where the people see the miracle and they're like, what's that? It's like the miracle is pretty low key. It's really amazing, but it's not like showy. And to me, this is one of those. It's not, the point of the miracle is not for the miracle to be flashy and cool. It's almost so subtle that you don't recognize the miracleness of it. But in the end, it actually works. What I think is so interesting is like Naaman is very clearly got expectations about what a miracle should look like.
Yes, he does.
And this is not what he thinks.
This is not what he had in mind.
Do you think that's part of what Elisha is doing, is trying to like upset the expectation of what he ought to do?
I mean, it's hard for me to try to guess what Elisha is like trying to do, but I think that's what he does.
That's the effect that it has.
I think that's the effect that it has, that, we come to associate, or maybe Naaman has come to associate miracles so closely with particular words or movements or, things like that, that as many times as we can say, it's not the movement that's making it happen. It's not the word. It's, that you have become a vessel for some divine power, however you want to talk about it. But people become so compelled by the form of it.
Yes.
That they think they're only looking at the form now. And so in the absence of the form, it feels like it just feels like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I don't know. This is a really interesting, critique to think about how ritual life functions in our world now, and in the world then, but how we become so attached to the form of it when the form was only ever a container for something else.
That's really lovely, Amy. And when you think about everything in this text, once it's gotten to Naaman, has had a proper form. Like there's a certain way things are done socially and politically. And here we add to that, there's a certain way things are done ritually, or at least that's the assumption. And it turns out that that's not the case. Now he's offended, and he said, we've got better rivers in Damascus. So why don't I just go wash in those? So it's not exactly like he is, I think, offended that the ritual doesn't look like the ritual he was expecting. He also seems to be offended by the very notion of the River Jordan being a place that he should bathe.
Mm.
What do you make of that?
I think I guess I take that as just an assumption that that like power or miracles, or I don't know the right word to use. I keep wanting to say magic, but I know that has a lot of baggage that I don't really mean to import. That it only happens in certain ways and in certain places. And for him, it's not in the rivers of Damascus either, but it's like, if I feel like he reads this as just go take a bath. And if you're saying go take a bath, then there's no reason I needed to come travel to Israel and go bathe in your dumb river. I didn't see it necessarily as an insult of the land of Israel, although I think the land of Israel is of interest to the author. So if you see that, I would like to hear more about, I would like you to draw that out.
That's interesting because I read it as very much sort of an ethnic bias, that he thinks that Arameans are superior. He's already lowered himself by coming to ask for help. He doesn't get help from the king, so now he's coming to some rando prophet. And then the instruction is, what you really need are the waters of Israel. And I read that as his response there is an ethnic bias. Like, how could I possibly get clean in the waters of Israel? Because Israel is no Aram. And so I read that as sort of a barrier for him, for his own healing, is the assumption that his culture, his land, his geography is superior to the place where he currently is. And it almost disrupts the whole thing for him.
That's so interesting. I don't think you're wrong. I think you're right. But it's so interesting to see how that belief can hang together with this willingness to engage with the king of Israel, and willingness to go into the land of Israel, and willingness to engage with this prophet of Israel, and willingness to, at least indirectly engage with the God of Israel, while still also holding that belief in the superiority of one's own, that's how you say that.
Yeah.
Land or people or whatever. Although as I'm saying it, I'm like, of course, we do this all the time. Like, this is how systemic prejudice works in America also.
Right.
So why am I surprised? Great. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I've talked myself through that little issue.
I do wonder if these things are connected too with you stick within the official channels because you know how to function within the official channels. And so there's a certain dignity to going to the king of some other place, to going to an official prophet maybe. But now when the prophet doesn't come to the door and then tells you to go, actually get in touch with the land.
Go get in the river.
Yeah. Now it's just too much. It's too much. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So it is the servants who save the day. Again. And so this started with a servant girl, a slave girl, and it's going to come back around here. And what they say is, if he told you to do something hard, you would have done that. And all he said was wash and become clean. And so Naaman went down and did just as he said. What do you make of their intervention? I mean, I think I'm interested both in the sort of the nature of their intervention and also that it is the servants who have to intervene again.
Yeah. I mean, on the fact that it's the servants who have to intervene again, I see that the way that they approach it as, again, really trying to break down this ego barrier a little bit, and say, it doesn't have to be the most special and difficult and attention-getting thing that you do. You don't have to, if he asked you to do something that was really special and remarkable, you would have done it. So I don't know. I see that as a response to the desire to see yourself as special and remarkable, and the kind of healing that you need is special and remarkable. And what he's asked you to do feels really mundane, and so you don't want to do it.
Naaman's a 4 on the Enneagram, just like me. What do you mean you don't have a special ritual for me?
Bring up the Enneagram.
I'm the most special person that ever lived.
Yeah, he might be a 4. I don't know. But he's not a healthy 4. You're a very healthy 4, Bobby.
I like it. It's just so interesting to me that if you bracket out the part between the servants, this is a really simple story, right? Naaman has a skin disease. Servant girl says, why don't you go see Elisha? Go to see Elisha. He says, bathe in the river. You bathe in the river. You're healed. Like, it is so straightforward.
Yeah.
And it is when the story gets away from the servants and it gets into the official channel, it creates this whole thing that then did not have to be so complicated. It should
Right.
not have been so
They
complicated.
have made it so much more complicated by taking it through these like realms of human power and ego that did not
Yeah.
have to be involved at all.
Exactly right. So after Naaman bathes and is made clean, he comes back and says, now I know for certain there's no God anywhere on earth except in Israel. I gotta say, I did not, just reading this story, fully see that coming.
Yeah. I know.
That's a big conclusion.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And when I first read it, I read it too fast. And so I read it as there is no God other than the God of Israel. Because we've seen that confession before, from time to time, come from the lips of foreigners. And, that's always exciting. But that's not what it says. It says, I know there is no God except in Israel.
Yeah, that seems important.
That seems important. And I'm wondering, or I'm guessing, or I don't know, I'm connecting that to your comment that the fact that there's something about the land here, like the holiness of the land of Israel and the idea of God's, presence or activity in that land. Even though this text started with the idea that God is paying attention to other things and is granting victories to other peoples too, there's some kind of holiness in this land that is not in the rivers of Damascus.
I love that, Amy, because what it's doing in my mind now is to say, like, this God is not just some sort of spiritual presence, but this God is like earthy and connected to the culture, connected to the place, connected to the people, connected to the ethnicity. Like, it is, you got to get down in the world in order to really, truly experience this God. And so, whereas Naaman seems perfectly happy to have been a Syrian in Syria with the God of Israel doing whatever the God does sort of spiritually, he seems to be having a real hard time with the sort of earthiness and connectedness to the specific place and people. And so I don't quite know where that goes, but the idea that accessing God involves particular places and particular people and particular like essences. Like you got to get down in the muck a little bit, in the water, in order to experience God.
Does it strike you as anything that Elisha doesn't even mention God to the man or invoke God in any way?
And when he said, I'll show him, what he said was, I'll show him there's a prophet in Israel, and didn't mention God then either. So Naaman has made this whole connection all on his own? Is that like it's sort of self-evident?
I guess.
So the king has just said a minute ago, nobody could do this except for God. And
right.
So now that it has happened, I think the only conclusion that you can come to, if you take the king at, if you assume that the king has said something that seems true, then the only conclusion can be that it was God who did this.
I think that's right if you take the king's statement as a key to unlock the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I think you also, just looking at the pshat, like looking at the simple meaning of the text, could take it as the king doesn't believe any human can do this, that this is a power reserved to God. But look, the prophet of Israel can do it.
Yeah.
I don't know that we want to go in that direction theologically because it's pretty weird. But I'm not sure how I feel about taking the king's statement as an interpretive key.
That's interesting because I don't know how to read the text without taking the king's statement as a key. I just think like that's sort of like when you see this, you know that there's God, and I don't know how to do that because I'm not God. And so then I think like, okay, when you see that, you know that there is God, and also you know that Elisha is the prophet of God.
Yeah. I guess I don't. Yeah, I don't know how to read this story. Like, I don't know, how did Elisha affect this healing? Like, how did this? Because it doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
Maybe I feel like Naaman. Like, what the heck kind of ritual was that? What do you mean dip in the Jordan 7 times?
Yeah.
Like, could he have gone to dip in the Jordan 7 times without talking to Elisha first, and it would have
worked? Does the Jordan just convey healing properties by itself?
Is the magic just in the Jordan, and he just needed to know what to do, or did Elisha do something to cause that to happen, or what? 'Tis a mystery.
I mean, I think the fact that Elisha doesn't even come to the door lends itself to the idea that the Jordan has healing properties of its own accord. And so what Elisha has offered is the knowledge that one needs to access the healing that's already there. Not that he has sort of done something that made it different. If you read it that way, which I think is a really interesting way to read it, then healing is available in Israel, in the Jordan. And Elisha's talent as a prophet is he understands that and knows how to access what's already there. But he himself, in this case anyway, is not actually conveying that healing. I really like that. I don't quite know where to go with it, but I really like that as a way of...
It's an interesting idea to chew on. I'm not totally sure where to go with it either, nor am I sure that this is what the story is supposed to say. I mean, if there is a supposed to say. But,
I know. When has BibleWorm been interested in what's supposed to say?
Yeah.
Like, what could this text offer us? That's how I always try.
Yes, that's a good question.
What is in this text that's available to us? Well, let me just ask you that question, Amy, since I think we're coming to the end of our episode here. What is available in this text for us and for the living of our lives in our communities today?
It has me thinking about the human proclivity, or at least my proclivity, to want interactions with God to look a certain way, like a certain big and strange way, like like very markedly not mundane way. And the different ways that Naaman wants that in this story, some of it is through human means. Like, he doesn't want to just go find this random dude in Israel. Like, he has to elevate this somehow. And I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to like elevate something to bring dignity to it. But, as we were saying before, it got to the point where, if religion is pointing at some truth, eventually we all just start staring at the hand that's pointing and making sure that we're buttressing that, and we sort of forget what it is we're looking at. I mean, I think that's a real risk. I think it's a risk that I run in my daily life. I imagine I'm not the only person, to sort of confuse our attempts to dignify and beautify our ritual with what it is we're actually trying to affect in the world. But as you were saying, like this could be a very simple story about the miraculous healing that is actually available to us all the time, and many people know how to access it. And they're not people who have any particularly impressive resume. They're just, they're just folks. We have to be willing to hear them and take them seriously and dignify their experiences in the world in a way that the social structure systems don't. But I like rituals so much, Bobby. I'm going to have to think about that. I love a beautiful ritual, but it is true. You cannot get so distracted by the form of the ritual that you are just rehashing the form and rehashing the form and rehashing the form, or the social structure. Like anything that brings you comfort by going down those tracks over and over and over again, you have to be really careful that you're revisiting what the actual goal is and getting there.
Yeah, I really like that, and especially where you ended up just there, because I do think in this text you get that sense of there is a social ritual, there's a rituals of status, and there are rituals of liturgy, and those are all getting tied up together. So for me, it's not exactly a critique of ritual, but I think where you were pointing us to is that when the ritual gets tied up with the social and the political, and to like there is a certain way that things have to be done that's very controlled by the powers that be, then you lose the significance of the ritual. And to me, this text is very clearly a critique of that idea and encountering God in unexpected ways, in unexpected places, when there is no ritual involved, really, or at least not an unexpected one, that God is available out in the world in those kinds of ways. And I really appreciate the way you got us into that, which is very much for me kind of a Mercy Church Canvas community kind of reading, where the wisdom that's in the story is the wisdom of just regular folks who have no social status. And when it gets to the people who, in theory, societally anyway, are the ones who are supposed to know what's going on, they have no idea what's happening. I really love that reading. And I mean, I circle back on this kind of thing all of the time to say we just need to be more thoughtful about who we listen to and who we're in community with and whose word we take seriously. I think that is a really powerful message in this text. I'm also toying with this idea that we came to right at the end, and I'm sad that we came to it right at the end because I don't quite know what to do with it. But the possibility that the healing is already there, like God is already present in the Jordan River, and like that water, because it is God's special place, has healing powers. If you know that and you know how to access it, because I think you end up with something there about God's healing presence is available in the world all the time. It doesn't require a specially endowed person to like wave their hand and mediate God's power into the world. It's already there. Healing is there. Healing is available. Healing is possible in ways that we might be too sophisticated in our own minds to actually realize is even possible. And if we would just take that seriously, then the sort of religious leaders like the Elishas and people like that of the world become inviters into a way of engaging the world more than conveyors of power. I don't quite know if that touches the ground, but it feels really real to me.
I love that. I love that. And as you were talking, Bobby, it was making me think, and I'm not well versed in this arena, so I won't say too much, but it makes me think of what little I know about sort of the relationship of indigenous peoples to the land where they live, and their sense of holiness in the land, and their deep understanding of what is in their particular land, you know, and respect for it. And just, I don't know, that kind of deep knowledge and connection that I do not have to the land, but I think can open a door for that kind of, I don't know, the kind of access to holiness or relationship with holiness through the land that fits in with what you're describing.
And from Naaman's perspective, it's in somebody else's land and in somebody else's culture and in somebody else's place. And he has to be willing to trust them to show him that. That seems important too.
Yes, although I wonder if we can imagine a world in which Naaman has such a mundane relationship with his own land that it would be even harder for him to imagine, I don't know, to relate to his own land in this way. Okay, now I'm really off-roading. Way off.
Off-road.
This was a lot of fun, Bobby.
Hey, next time we're going to do one of our peripheral prophets we were talking about. We're going to be in the book of Micah, chapters 5 and 6. We did a little Micah this summer in our economic justice series. We're going to do a little more Micah next time.
Come back for some more. That sounds great.
All right, Amy, I will see you then.
I'll see you then. Have a good week.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of BibleWorm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWorm podcast for details.
BibleWorm is produced by Bobby Williamson and edited by Joel and Laura Becker. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for helping to make this podcast possible.
Join us next time when we'll be discussing the prophet Micah and his call for justice, kindness, and humility. What does the Lord require of you? To keep on digging.